morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world, and whatever time it is as you tune in. Welcome! Wominjaka in the tongue of the Wurundjeri people, the lands of whom, upon which I sit. It really does feel like home to be sitting on a Zoom call with a bunch of lovely people like you. Now, it should feel like home because I am, of course, at home. But it especially feels like home to be here hanging out with you. I'm really honoured and excited and pumped to have you all here. Many of you will have sat on a webinar with me before. Can I get a quick show of hands? If this is not your first rodeo and you have sat in a Zoom looking somewhat like this with me before, just give us a little wave. Very good. Hello, hello, hello. And if, on the other hand, this is your first time and you're not quite sure what to expect, can you give me a wave? Anyone new for the very first time? Excellent. Hello, Emma. Hello. Good. Hello, Toby. Great to see you all. I'm very excited to have you. Today is the first day of an experiment. And as you'll see, somewhat appropriately perhaps, this whole webcast is about how I reckon you should run experiments. But today is the first day in experiment that I'm launching. As many of you would know, I've been hibernating for winter. Mish and I had a child 8.5 or 9 weeks ago, and so we've been nesting. The nesting phase is over. She and the child, his name's Caspian, by the way, and he's doing great. She and the child have buggered off to Japan. So I am sitting here with two children who are literally just outside this window running around like crazy. You may hear them squealing at various times. So we've come out from the hibernation phase. We're back. So she's off playing ultimate frisbee. Yes, 8.5 weeks postpartum, she's running around as an athlete because she's a beast, an absolute beast. And I am back running webcasts. But it's a little bit different this time. Because this time I get to do and say whatever I want. There are no boundaries. There are no guidelines. I get to make it up as I go along. And as many of you would know, I am well known for making things up as I go along anyway. But now the guidelines are somewhat more rubbery. Anyway, let's begin, shall we? So many of you would know I am the author so far of 2 books. One is called Speakership. It's about how to lead while speaking. And one is called Tribe of Learning. It's about how to engage a group of people in a long period of learning, whether they are your staff or your clients or your children or anything else. And I am writing a 3rd book right now. This is just a sketch that I made on my iPad, but the book is called The Solo Pro. And it is about the fact that I think that you can make money meaningfully and freedomfully. Now, I had to use the word freedomfully because the English language didn't quite have the word that I wanted. So, who was the guy that wrote the Jabberwocky again? Is that Lewis Carroll? Was it Lewis Carroll that wrote the Jabberwocky? Yeah. So anytime he needed a word and the English language didn't have it, he just made it up. I think this is a good idea. I wanted the word freedomfully to exist, and now it does. So, this experiment that you're all joining me on the very ground floor of is a quest to make money meaningfully and freedomfully. My goal is, and like there are lots of people like me who, teach you how to run a successful business, who focus solely on the money. And I would like to add to that, not only do I want you to be profitable, not only do I want you to make money, I also want you to be free. And so my goal is that you get to work 1,000 hours a year or less at an average of $500 an hour or more. So if you do the maths on 1,000 hours a year, that's like essentially 20 hours a week, so a part-time job for 10 months of the year. And then 2 months of the year, you bugger off and do whatever you want. I have been living like that for the last decade or more. About 15 years, I've been working a basically part-time job and taking at least 2 months of the year off and making enough money to support my family and live where we want to live and live the life that we want to live along the way. And I don't know if any of you saw my post on LinkedIn yesterday. I screen grabbed a post by Grant Cardone, who's one of those like real douche bro kind of marketing, yeah, sell your stuff dudes. And he was like, essentially, if you want to be successful, cancel your life until you're 60, and now you're a success. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to have fun now. I want to be free now. So we're on the ground floor of an experiment here. I hope to create an environment, a process, a community where we get to make money meaningfully and freedomfully. And you are here on the very first day. So thank you. I'm excited. One of the things that I will tell you many, many times is that if you're going to succeed doing this, so if you're going to succeed creating a successful solopreneurial business, you will do so in concert with your clientele. So you might have a vision for who you want to be or the work you want to do, but just as influential along the path of you getting to that point will be the people who you serve, and they will have as much or possibly more of an influence than you will. And so this webinar for me is essentially the first opportunity for you, the people that I want to serve, to influence how I'm going to do things. And so you should feel totally free to ask questions or send this webinar in a particular direction, or send me an email after this one and say, Cole, I'd really love to expand on this topic or that topic, or follow this train of thought. I have a bunch of ideas about what we could do together, and I'm excited to share them with you, but I bet you have a bunch of ideas too. And you have every bit as much of a right in directing what we do as I do. Does that make sense? Awesome. Can I just get a yeehaw in the chat box if you're on board, you're excited, and you're ready to go? These are good too. Giddy up. Very good. Excellent. Woohoo, let's do it. I agree. So, today's topic is how to play the... There's so many ways to spell it. I love it, Lisa. I reckon you can possibly tell which area of America someone's from by how they spell it. Like, the more W's there are at the end, the more southern they are. Yeehaw! I feel like 6 or 7 W's is probably the max. That means you're from, I don't know, like Louisiana or something. Anyway. Okay. Today's topic is how to play the probabilities as a solo pro. So what I want you to do, if you're going to work 20 hours a week or less and take 2 months a year off, right, or more, do you get that what the work that you do has to be really, really effective? Like, do you get that if you're doing semi-good work, that if you're doing semi-good strategies, you're not going to make it? And that if you are going to make it in a monetary sense, it's going to be at the expense of your freedom. And I don't want that. I want you to be free now. And so therefore, if we're going to succeed and we're going to make 500 grand a year or more as a solo pro working 1,000 hours a year or less, then the stuff that we do has to be super, super effective. And so today's webinar is all about making decisions and implementing strategies that are more likely to be effective. And likely is the key kind of operating term here, because the universe is not deterministic, it's probabilistic. The universe is not deterministic, it's probabilistic. And what that means is, it doesn't matter how perfectly you set something up. All that ever does is create a likelihood that it will succeed or fail. And the more perfectly it's set up, the more likely it is to succeed, but nothing is perfectly likely to succeed. And so what we want to do is play the probabilities. And unfortunately, schools spent a lot more time teaching us algebra and calculus, and a lot less time teaching us probability. And unfortunately, in the real world, I think probability is way, 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 way more useful to us. If you may forgive me for having a short rant, online gambling apps have become an absolute scourge of society, right? Hands up if you agree. They suck, right? Totally suck. So here's what and I have actually done a very small amount of work with Sportsbet, who are one of the biggest companies here in Australia, right? And I did it because I wanted to see inside their systems, right? I literally took a small job with them because I wanted to know what it was like in the business, because I hate them that much. I also priced it extremely highly. What they do is they get every single individual onto an app deliberately to work out what that individual is bad at calculating the expected value of, right? So do you get that if I have one dice, the expected value if I'm rolling this and I have to get a 4 or more is 0.5, so I'm 50% likely to succeed or fail, right? And if I'm using one dice, I'm usually pretty good at calculating that. But what gambling apps do is they work out what each individual gambler is terrible at calculating the expected value of, and they put ads on your home screen for things that look like a good deal to you, but are actually a shocking deal, and you're almost certain to lose. Because we suck at probability. We're no good at thinking in probabilistic terms. We think that everything is deterministic, and if I do that, then this is going to happen. But that's not how the world works. Does anyone know who Nate Silver is? The name Nate Silver ring any bells? Lisa's nodding her head because she's American. Anyone else? Who's Nate Silver? Lisa, do you want to tell us who Nate Silver is? Correct. Yep. So yeah, election predictor guru is Linda's thing. 538. I can't remember why it's called 538. I think that's the number of electoral college votes. So he's famous because in 2008, when Barack Obama was like the young up-and-comer, the upstart that nobody was really expecting to win, Nate Silver accurately predicted the electoral college vote in 49 out of the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, which is like an absurd piece of predictive power or whatever. And it made him an overnight success and made a business out of it. Like, he's now by far the most famous, essentially statistician, I guess, or probabilistic guesser in all of America and possibly the world. And I find it really funny because in 2016, when Trump was coming along and everybody thought Trump was a wild outsider who had absolutely no chance of winning, and Nate Silver gave him a 28% chance of winning, which is not high, but it's not zero, right? And then, of course, Trump won, and the entire media lit up about how Nate Silver was wrong. As though if Nate Silver had given him less than a 50% chance of guessing, then surely Clinton had to win. And Silver was like, what are you talking about? I gave him a 28% chance. That's not that unlikely. But humans are so bad at probability that most people saw 28% and thought, no, that's not going to happen. And then when it did, they were like, oh, well, he must have been wrong. This isn't how the universe works. Everything we do is probabilistic. Everything we do creates a likelihood of success. And I have a sense that most of us in our solo businesses tend to overvalue good work than over the probability of success. Does that make sense? I reckon we tend to overvalue good work over the probability of success. So I have a personal story about this. It comes from about 8 to 10 years ago, and I was doing a lot of work for Peter Cook, who's kind of like well, number one, he's one of my oldest friends. He's best mates with my older brother. I used to go to school sitting on his lap. Many of you would know him, though. He worked with thought leaders for a long time. He runs a business called Pure Bookkeeping, which is ludicrously successful. And he now essentially works with people who've graduated their solo practice into a business. So anyone who turns a solo business into a big business, an entrepreneurial business, Pete is kind of the guru in that space. Anyway, I was doing a lot of work for Pete, and I wanted to do good work. And so I found myself sitting at my desk for many hours a day. And I noticed that I just wasn't really getting much done. And now I suspect I might have ADHD or one of those things, but I don't really care. I'm not going to go and check. But I found myself sitting at my desk for many hours a day, Can anyone, if you could admit that right now you're doing a lot of sitting at your desk for many hours a day, can you give me just a little hand, Katie? Okay, cool. It's all right. I get it, right? I have totally been there, and I'm not judging. It is what our culture teaches us to do, right? So it's a completely normal and it's not a rational response, but it's a normal response. So here's the thing. I was sitting at my desk for a long time, and I just noticed that I wasn't being that productive, and that I wasn't very happy, and I certainly wasn't free. But because I was so desperate to make Pete happy, right, I felt some like necessity to sit at my desk. And so I decided I would launch an experiment. And the experiment was very simple. It was as follows. If I noticed that I was sitting at my computer working but not really achieving anything, I gave myself full permission to stand up, go outside and ride a unicycle for as long as I wanted. Right? So I just had a little flat area outside my house at the time, and I had a unicycle leaning against the fence. And anytime I found myself sitting at my computer not really doing any work, I was allowed to go outside and ride the unicycle for as long as I wanted. And once I was bored of unicycling, I would come back inside and go back to work. I went from working 8 hours a day to 4 hours a day. I got quite good at riding the unicycle in about 2 weeks, and I got a lot more done. It was one of the most profound, life-changing experiments that has ever happened in my life. And Shane has just told me that the gain on my microphone is too high, and I reckon I can fix that quite quickly. So just give me a moment while I find my sound. I'll give you a little exercise while we're doing it. Can you just quickly think, if you're currently sitting at your desk for a few too many hours of the day, can you quickly come up with a roughly equivalent experiment? What's something that you could give yourself permission to do for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes? You could just stand up and leave your desk and do it in a way that was like really guilt-free. Like you were doing the right thing by standing up and going and doing that. So you look that up, and I'm going to change my sound. How's my sound now, Shane? Is that good? Lovely. Okay, we've got a few people chucking some in. So I'd love to hear some other voices, because otherwise I'm just going to talk too much. So unmute yourself. What's something that you could do where you could just stand up from your desk, wander around and go and do something and feel totally guilt-free? Unmute. What is it?
I'm going to go run around the block, I think.
Go for a run around the block. Totally. Do you have to run, or is it a walk?
Well, I figure the run's harder, so I better really do some work or I have to run.
Okay, cool. Go for a run around the block for Shane. What have you got? What could you do?
I'd like to paint.
Paint? As in like on canvas, creative paint?
Yeah.
Nice.
Here, Cole, is the idea of this alternate activity a punishment so you'll work, to Shane's
No,
point?
no,
Okay, or
definitely
it's
not.
something enjoyable that we're
Yeah.
looking. Okay, just
I loved unicycling 10 years ago. Like, I totally enjoyed it. What's a couple of others? What could you do that would be guilt-free?
Play my piano.
Play your piano.
Or actually play with it, because I can't play it properly.
Right. Play with my piano. Excellent. That sounds good. That sounds good. I invite you, because this was I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that was a life-changing moment for me. I worked half the amount. I sat at my desk, I should say, half the amount when I launched this experiment. I did a lot of unicycling because it turns out I have the attention span of a goldfish, right? I think I was evolved to prowl the African savannah, not stare at a computer screen. That's the conclusion that I drew from it. And what I realized is that if I work 4 hours a day, I'm done. And so my challenge soon became, how do I make those 4 hours as effective as possible? Now, some days, honestly, it's 2. But I need those 2 hours to be as effective as possible. But for those of you who are currently chaining yourself to a desk a little too often, I would love you to launch a little experiment. It should last 2 weeks. So I'm a huge fan of experiments. And in general, I think experiments should last a minimum of 2 weeks. Because 1 week's not quite enough to really tell if it's working, right? But the experiment I'd love you to launch looks as follows. If I'm sitting at my desk and I'm not engaged in a piece of work that absolutely has to be done right now, like I couldn't leave my desk while talking to all you lot. If I suddenly got bored now, I'm not allowed to just stand up and go ride my unicycle now. That would be weird. But if I was like writing the blurb for this webcast, that's not a job that has to happen right now, then I'm allowed to leave. So I invite you to come up with an experiment where you're allowed to just leave your desk and go and do that thing. And I honestly think you should be allowed to do that thing for as long as you want. If you want to put a half-hour time limit on it, or Shane, 1 lap around the block or whatever, that's fine. But I invite you to experiment with the idea that the value of the work you produce is what matters, not the quantity of the work that you produce. Jason Fox once said, smart people overvalue effort and undervalue value. I'm going to say that again because it's just profound. Smart people overvalue effort and undervalue value. And the entire point of this discussion is that your effort is overrated. And the value that it produces is the only thing that the universe actually cares about. The feedback the universe gives you won't be related to how many hours you spend sitting at your desk. The feedback that the universe sends you will be related to the impact that that work has on other people. Quick show of hands if your business involves helping other people. Oh, I know that was a trick question. I knew the answer was everyone, but the answer is literally everyone, right? The only value in your work is how it impacts other people, and none of them are timing you at your desk. None of them know how long it took you to produce the thing you're trying to produce. So if we're going to be smart about this, and if we're going to be free now, right, then what we want to do is find strategies, find activities, find actions, find stuff to do that has a huge impact for other people, but doesn't take very long. It's the 80-20 rule over and over and over again. Make sense? Cool. Any thoughts at this point? Is anyone perturbed or excited or anything? Yeah, a question. Penelope.
Hi, I just wanted to say there is a theory out there about the way that people process things in terms of how they feel, how they act, and how they think. People do that. This theory is that people do that in a different order. And from listening to this, if you sort of look at that theory, people who have an acting further up that scale. So for me, I feel something, then I need to do something. And then after I've done it, I think through and go, oh, was that actually right? That's my process. So what that means is because the acting is further up my scale, I'll need to move. So that unicycle example, the wall squats I used to do, or push-ups or sit-ups, or that works for me because act is higher up the scale. But if someone listening to this isn't act like first or second, then running around may not be for them. Like that might sound like torture, like, hang on, I'm going from one horrible activity sitting still to another horrible activity. I think I just wanted to sort of say that the point is that you do something that's freeing to you. So freeing to you is sitting still with a cup of tea, watching a pond, or sitting still in nature, or having a bath. Then that's okay. It's not that we all have to become these hyperactive running around people. Yeah, and interestingly, they say that the people who do have act higher up, if you look at cultures that are, like you mentioned about being in Africa or being on the land, they tend to have act higher up the scale. So it's feeling, acting, and thinking.
Yeah, cool.
So it was in a lot of orders. In our society, I think is further up the scale. So someone like me is abnormal and more likely to be seen as ADHD running around because they don't fit what's more normal in our culture. But I don't want to sort of take too much time with that, but I just wanted to say that for people's activity, I think the point is, if I've understood correctly, it's about doing something that makes you feel free, not trapped.
Yes, exactly. So it's not. So one of the dangers of being the guy who starts a webinar and tells people what to do is that you tell everybody to be like you, which is completely ineffective for anyone who isn't like you, right? And so like Penelope, everything you've said, I totally resonate with. And what I'm asking people to do is find something that resonates with them. And so my whole theory about personal development and business development is essentially that everything's an experiment. And what we should do is launch experiments, and they can be crazy. Like they can be, I'm going to start my day by having 3 cups of tea and doing nothing until 2 p.m. Right now, that may not sound effective, but there could be a person in the world for whom 7 hours of pondering prior to doing anything is actually the key to success. And I want that person to run an experiment that lasts 2 weeks where they have 3 cups. Yeah, there we go. It's Richard Hodge. Right? I want that person to run that experiment for 2 weeks and find out that that's the way that works for them. So that first little idea, which is if you're sitting at your desk overvaluing effort and undervaluing value, can you at least just come up with something to try and break that circuit? I want you to realize that time at your desk isn't value to your clients. So that's the first little experiment. But I'm actually talking about probabilities in a broader sense today. On your hand or hands, if you need to, how many different things do you offer to your clientele? So you might say, well, I have a speech that I give at conferences, and I have 2 different training programs, and I offer one-on-one coaching, or I do graphic design, I make a logo or whatever. Like, how many things do you offer to your clientele? I'm assuming, like, you might have more than 10, in which case, so how many is it? 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 3. Cool. So each of those things has a likelihood, a probability of succeeding. And one of the mistakes that lots of people make is that they offer something to market, right, which has some probability of succeeding. And it might be a 10% chance and it might be a 90% chance. We don't know. But they offer that thing to the market and then they just keep pushing it. When if they offered 6 things to the market, each of which had some probability of succeeding, then maybe they'd be way more likely to start making money really early, but we haven't given the universe an opportunity to give us that feedback because we didn't offer enough things. I think there is a massive difference between what's rational and optimal to do when you're in a solo business compared to when you're in a big entrepreneurial business. So I'll give you an example. Back in the day, I was into motor racing, and it means I knew lots of people that worked for car companies. And when Holden produced the VT Commodore, doesn't matter if you don't know what car that is, it's just a car. They invested $1 billion into creating this new car. $1 billion. None of us are ever going to see $1 billion, not even going past, do you know what I mean? Like $1 billion is a telephone number of a figure. Holden invested $1 billion in 8 years developing a car because what they were trying to do was maximize the probability that it would be a success commercially. Does that make sense? So they invested 8 years and $1 billion in pushing the probability that that car would succeed as a commercial offering as close to 100% as they possibly could. Does that make sense? So they invested a heap of time and effort into maximizing the probability that it would succeed. Do you have $1 billion or 8 years to set aside for the next thing you're going to take to market? No. You're at the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. They are a huge business with resources and literally tens of thousands of staff, hundreds of thousands of staff, unlimited everything. And we're at the opposite end of the spectrum where it's just you and your ideas and nothing else. And the problem I see is that lots and lots and lots of solo practitioners are influenced by the broader business community, and we think that the way to succeed is to create something that is as perfect as possible to maximize its individual chances of success. but you're probably in competition with other consulting firms, other professional services firms, etc., right? You're probably in competition with big firms with lots of people and lots of resources. And I reckon what we should be doing is leaning into the strengths of what we do as an individual, which is that you're small and nimble and fast. You can do everything quickly. You could come up with an idea and offer it next week. Does that make sense? So, I'd like to run with a metaphor here. It's this big bag of dice. Every time we do something out in the market, we're rolling dice. There's a probability that it's going to work. I might roll a 6 and succeed, or I might roll a 1 and fail. Make sense? So if I want to roll as many 6s as possible, because 6s means someone bought my thing and then there's money in my bank account, okay? So can we just workshop? If I was to try and roll as many 6s as possible, what are the ways that I could roll more and more 6s? Can you give me some suggestions? What are the things that I can do with the dice to make sure I roll more 6s? Right, okay, so we've got roll them faster. So I totally agree with that. So let's, here we go. For some reason, this camera's gone a bit weird and slow, but if I just roll 1 dice, that was a 5, so unfortunately I didn't win. I'm going to bring this down closer. If I only roll it once, then I only give myself 1 chance. So one way that I can improve my chance of rolling a 6 is I can roll more often. Okay, so I still haven't rolled one. Oh dear, how long is it going to take? Right, so I can roll more often. Now, as you can see, when I have a 1 in 6 chance, I've now rolled 10 dice and I still haven't got a 6. Penelope said, roll them all at once. Ha! There are no 6s there either. I reckon there are 2 more things we can do to roll dice and get 6s. Paul, what did you say? Roll them a particular way? Was that the suggestion, or like drop them a particular way? Yes, exactly. Load the dice. Cheat. Make it so that the number 1 side is really heavy and it makes it more likely that it's going to stand on number 6. I think the final one is roll different dice. So you know how those nerds that play, and when I say those nerds, this was me for many years. But you know nerds that play role-playing games have all those different dice? So they call this a D6 because it has 6 sides, but there are also dice with 4 sides, 5 sides, 10 sides, 12 sides, 20 sides, etc. If the goal is to get a 6 or more, then you can simply roll different dice, okay? And if you roll a dice that has more numbers above 6 on it, then you're just more likely to succeed. So, what I want us to do is take this really simple knowledge of probability, right? That there are these ways we can increase the chances that we're going to roll a successful roll. And I want them to apply that style of thinking to the work that we're doing in our business. So let's start with the first one. So there are 4 ways to increase the chances that you're going to roll a 6, right? Can you just write these down? Because I'm going to get you to then think from the literal dice rolling and turn it into ideas that you could implement in your business. The first one is to roll more often, right? So rather than rolling 1 dice and just looking at it and hoping it comes up a 6, you're going to roll 1 and then another, then another, then another, then another, right? We're going to roll dice more often. That increases the chances we're going to get a 6. The next suggestion was to roll more dice, okay? So rather than rolling 1 dice, just have 10 and roll 10. Now, of course, if you combine those 2 together, you could roll 10 at a time and then do that more often, right? That'd be good. The next suggestion is to roll different dice. So pick up random dice, in a sense, and roll them because they might have more than 6 sides, and it might increase your chances of rolling a 6 or better. Okay? And the final one is load the dice. So that is It doesn't have, Paul called it cheating, which it is if you're gambling. It's definitely cheating if you're gambling. But in our metaphor, I don't think it's cheating, right? In a sense, I would say what Holden was doing by spending 8 years and spending $1 billion was loading the dice of that one roll, right? And they were loading it to a nearly ridiculous extent. So where the 6 side was pretty much the entire dice and the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were so small as to be almost impossible to roll, right? So loading the dice is a bit like investing time and effort in increasing the probability. So you got these 4 categories, okay? Can I give you 3 minutes to look down at these 4 ways of rolling dice? And what I want you to do is go, okay, I'm rolling dice in my business. I'm implementing strategies, I'm executing ideas, I'm making phone calls, I'm talking to people, I'm offering them things, whatever. And these all have some probability of success. Now let's narrow the definition of success in a kind of really pithy way. Let's say success is they pay you money. All right, let's define success for this particular exercise as simply they give you cash. Can you spend 3 minutes looking at each of those 4 categories, right, of ways of altering the probabilities of success? And I want you to ideate either things that you have done which have increased your chances of success that fit one of those categories, or things that you could do which would increase the chances that fit one of those categories. Cool? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'd like you to try and get at least 2 in each category if you can. You might come up with 10 in a category. Everyone understand? Good to go? Hit it. Question, Shane?
Yes, mate. Rolling more dice versus rolling more often.
Yep.
I'm assuming rolling more often would be just pimping the same product to more people to get a wider audience potentially versus same audience, more products.
Yeah, that could be one way of thinking of it. I was thinking of like, I'm running an experiment here and there's 20, 30 people on this call. That's rolling more dice at once. If I rang each of you individually all day, that would be rolling more often. That's one way of thinking about the metaphor. But you take the metaphor wherever it takes you, dude. This is an ideation strategy. There's no right or wrong.
Can I ask a question, Cole, as well?
Of course.
Can you give an example of loading dice? What would that be?
Totally. So if you were going to be calling people to invite them to learn to become a better sporting coach, you could load the dice by having sent them a white paper first that detailed the key idea, right? So you spend a bit of time and effort the same way that Holden spent 8 years and $1 billion, right? You might spend a week or 2 weeks producing something that increases the chances they'll either pick up your call or that they'll be receptive to your call or that they'll want to buy the thing because they're already whatever. You're loading the dice by putting in some effort first. 1 minute warning. Okay, how'd we go? Did you get a bunch of things written down? Did you get some ideas? Give us like some indication on your fingers or in the chat box. How many ideas did you write down? How many thoughts have you got? We got 5, 20, 9, 2. Excellent. This music is way too relaxing. Sorry, next time I'll put on dubstep, Lisa. All right, what I would love to hear is a few... Yes, Louise, that's what we need to do. Next time we'll get Richard teed up and he will be sitting in his bit. That is a genius idea. All right, this is all coming together. See, it's a co-creation between all of us. You're all making this much better than I would have. Okay. I'd love to hear some ideas. They can be anything. I don't want you to feel like there's right answers or wrong answers. I know for a fact I have not thought of every possibility here. And I'm just really curious, like using this metaphor, you're rolling dice and these are the way you can affect your probabilities with actual dice. How does that look when you then turn it into your actual business world? What are some of the things that come up? So can I get a few hands up if you're willing to share something? Come on, don't be shy. Who's going to go first? Okay, we're going to get Paul. We're going to get Katie. That was enough of a hand up. I'm taking you. Oh, no. Okay, fine. All right, we'll start with Paul and he'll get us loosened up. Paul, what are you thinking?
Okay, so roll more often. For me, it's about, if you've already hit a 6, try and sell more to that 6. So upsell, sell more to existing customers.
Yes, totally. I love that. All right.
Yeah. So I've got a bit of a blockage, right? If I've got 50K from them, that's it. I can't ask for more, but
right.
You can always ask. There's always more at some point.
Yeah, and you'd have to think, if someone's already committed to giving you $50,000, that's a pretty clear sign that they like you, respect you, trust you, love your work.
Yeah, you're already in love. Let's just push the friendship a bit more.
And do you have, like, obviously you don't say, would you like fries with that? But, like, do you have a strategy that, like, do you, when you think to yourself, oh, I should upsell now, like, what do you do?
Yeah, so sometimes if I'm running a training course or a workshop, somebody might, spruik an issue that they're having, and I talk about, oh, I've got coaching for that, or some other kind of service. So spruik it while you're working.
Yeah, I love that. And so it's almost like you're listening, like that says to me, you've got an awareness and you're listening for opportunity even as you're in the process of delivering a previous sale. Yeah, 100%. One of the things, so I don't know if all of you saw, but I've announced another webcast similar time next week. And the topic for that is just how to get heaps of clients into your business. And what you said there, yes, kind of pretty close to one of the ideas that I will be sharing. Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Who else wrote something down that you would be willing to share? Hello? Yeah, KP.
I was just gonna say, do more buskouts. Like, instead of doing it once a month, like, get out there and put it out more often. But I'm not even sure if that's a smart strategy or not.
Yeah, right. So it's basically, I'm already doing something that's working. Can I just do that more often? Totally. And I think, like, particularly for ones where, like, I think for busking out, which for anyone doesn't know, busking out's the idea that you get an audience together and talk to them all at once. In a sense, what I'm doing right now is a form of busking out. None of you paid to be here, but I've got this audience of people who are interested in my stuff, and you can bet your butt that at the end I'm going to tell you how you could get more, right? And so one argument could be, hey, if this works once, why couldn't it work 2 or 3 times? One of the things about probabilities is we want to be smart about how we can affect them. And so if you find that, for example, sending out a white paper to potential clients on LinkedIn has a 20% chance of success, as an example, right? So for every 5 people you send it to, one of them says, oh, that's great, I'm interested in that. Well, you can essentially get as many clients as you want by sending it to 5 times as many people as you want clients. And that doing that, sending it to 5 more people and then 5 more people and then 5 more people doesn't really change the probabilities that it's going to work, because each of those are an independent roll of the dice, if that makes sense. Where there are other things, if I offered this webinar 6 times a day, every day, do you get that the probabilities of each individual webinar working are going to, like, calamitously, like, drop? Because I don't have enough people in my orbit to get into those webinars to keep that probability happening. So KP, once a month might not be the ideal number. Maybe once a fortnight or once a week is, but I definitely don't think that once a day would be sensible. And so we want to be like, it'd be hard work, but we want to be mindful of, does changing the frequency that I'm doing this actually change, in effect, the quality of the dice that I'm rolling? So yeah, cool. Any other thoughts? Lisa, and then Katie.
My thoughts were on social media and platforms, like sharing on different platforms and in different ways, because I think we often think that if we share something, everyone's seen it, but actually the algorithms aren't that kind. And so it's like, what are the different platforms? What are the different ways? Is it, even like for Instagram, for example, doing a difference between a post and a reel is completely different algorithms. And so it's like, are you sharing, whether you're doing a video on LinkedIn or whether you're doing a post on LinkedIn, or like just different roll dicing on different platforms.
Yeah, totally. And it's almost like if any post that you have has some possibility of catching the algorithm's attention, what you're saying is roll different dice, like make them a video, make them a long form, make it a reel, make it a this, make it on that platform, make it on that platform. And yeah, totally. Like, and I don't think any of us, I mean, I'm looking at the names that I know here. I don't think any of us here are like social media experts to the point where we know exactly what to do where. And there are little things you can do that can increase your chances. Like, so I know, for example, when you're posting on LinkedIn, it will always edit it down to 3 lines and then turn it into a see more button. And I know that I'll increase the probability of my dice rolling a 6 if I word the post so that there's a cliffhanger right before the see more button. And so I like, do you know what I mean? And so that's like a little thing that I've learned about text posts in LinkedIn. But absolutely, Lisa, like try different things, roll different dice on different social media platforms and see what pops up.
The amount of people I know that go, oh no, I put that on social media, and I go, yeah, once on one day at one time. Like, really? I thought everyone was going to be online in that moment. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a different roll dice.
Yeah, totally. And actually that kind of, I think about it a little bit this way. Forgive me, everybody. I'm sort of a mathematically minded person. I was really good at physics at school. So forgive me if this is one step too nerdy for you. But I think of probabilities of things kind of like this. So this is time, and this is like likelihood of success, if that makes sense, okay? And I reckon the different things that we do, one of the things that can be really useful to think about is, of the different things that we do, they have different like probability curve shapes. And so what Lisa's just said there is going on social media once and sharing something once, even if it goes really well, isn't likely to get you where you want to go unless you do it for a sustained period of time. So I think about that this way. Social media or any good, blogging, newsletter has this kind of exponential effect where the probability of it delivering huge value into your business early in the piece, even if you're really good at it, is pretty low. And over time, the likelihood that it's going to be delivering value into your business increases towards 100%. Like if you consistently do social media forever, even if you're not that good at it, you'll eventually find your crowd, right? On the other hand, there are other things that I reckon there are like different shaped curves. So for example, if you go, I'm going to offer a coaching thing, I reckon the probability of any particular like coaching offering working is about 50%, right? And so when you launch it, it has about a 50% chance of succeeding. And if it doesn't succeed and you just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, I reckon the likelihood of it succeeding actually goes down over time. And if you've been pushing the same thing for 6 months and it still hasn't worked, just fucking stop. Because you're down here now. And it's probably not going to work. Right? There are other things, on the other hand, which can actually do the opposite. Like, so when you start doing sales calls, okay? I reckon your very first sales call might have a 20% likelihood of success. I'm talking about the first sales call you ever do in your life. Hands up if your first sales call was like pretty awkward and you felt like a dipshit and it train wrecked, right? Yeah, that was by far the most likely outcome. Most sales call for people start, likelihood down here. But as you do sales calls, whether you are getting sales or not, the likelihood that you're getting better at it is nearly 100%. And so the probability that your sales calls are going to improve is like this steady growth somewhere towards a ceiling of about 50 to 70 to 80%. Do you know what I mean? Like even Lisa O'Neill doesn't make a sale every time she gets on the phone, despite the fact that she's the most compelling human on earth. But her first sales call was probably terrible, but her 10,000th sales call is probably really good. And so one of the things I do think it's worth thinking about is, does the thing that I'm doing now have a natural curve? Do you know what I mean? Is it one of those things that likely builds over time, and so I should commit to it even though it's not working every single time right now? Or is it one of those things that dips away? And if you don't know, like if you don't have a perspective on it and you can't really be sure, can you talk to someone else? Like ring me or ring Paul or like ring a friend, ring someone who knows who's been there before and be like, hey, I'm doing this. Hasn't seemed to be working yet. Is this one of those ones I should persist with or should I try a different dice? Make sense? Okay. Has this been too much? Is your brain exploding? Are we good? Okay, good. I am very much of the opinion. How often does switching your market help? Oh, that is a juicy question, Rachel. We could spend an hour on that one alone. In fact, I have announced an Ask Me Anything for next Tuesday, my time. So that'll be Monday, your time. We could potentially debate that. But that's a really good question. I think markets are one of those curves. I'll go back to this one. They could be either the aqua curve, meaning you've got about a 50-50 chance of it working, but it dips over time. Confusingly though, I think they can also go this way, meaning you have a 50-50% chance at the start, but it increases over time. How do you know the difference? I think the difference is if your efforts in that market are giving you enough penetration that you are getting feedback from the market, like you're getting enough sales with them, for example, that you're working with a few of them and you're learning more and more about them. So long as your knowledge of the market, the people within it, the problems they face, etc., are growing, then I think your probability of success in that market is also growing. If you feel like your knowledge of the market is staying relatively static and you're not receiving new insights, etc., then I reckon your probability is actually dropping. And so if you want a sign as to whether it's working or not, I reckon it could be this. Can you think of 2 things a week to post to social media that you think would be relevant to those people? Because if you're working with them and you're learning about them, you'll be getting ideas about what's relevant to them. So for example, you guys may have noticed I've been on a real social media charge for the last 4 months. And I have been working in a market of solo entrepreneurs enough that the conversation that I'm having just give me ideas. And I don't have to have a social media marketing plan. I just go, oh, what happened yesterday? And because there's always something that happened yesterday that inspires a post to go on social media, I kind of know that my efforts in this market are landing and my probabilities are going up. If I was thinking like, what happened 6 months ago that I can think of, then I think my probabilities would be going down. Does that make sense? Yeah. The thing about switching markets, the thing about trying anything new is I love this idea that you can increase your surface area for luck. Does that make sense? So like if you keep yourself a tiny, tiny little ball, the likelihood that you'll bounce into anything interesting is not so huge. But if you expand yourself and increase your surface area, the likelihood that you'll bounce into something interesting or valuable is way, way bigger. And so I want us all to think about increasing our luck surface area by rolling more dice and rolling more dice at once and rolling different dice, whether that means trying something in a different market or trying a different thing into the same market or trying speaking because we've never done that before and we've always just tried to phone people or whatever. Like increase the likelihood that serendipity will deliver magic into your world. So I very, very, very strongly believe that me saying all of this to you means nothing. Okay, I really appreciate that you've all been here. I genuinely do. I would have done this to nobody, but it's better that you are all here, and I'm super grateful that you turned up. But if the only thing that this webinar was me talking and you listening and sharing a few ideas, whatever, and then you go back to your life as it was, it's a fail. So here's what I would like you all to do. Look down at your sheet of paper or search see what you're feeling. See what you're thinking, Penelope. Right? What I want you to do is choose an action. I want you to choose something that you're going to do differently. Now, it could just be the experiment that I talked about right at the start, where you just experiment with not sitting at your desk somehow. Because I want you to be free now, and I'm very convinced you'll be more productive if you do that. But equally, it could be, I'm going to reach out to these people, try this new idea. I'm going to roll this different dice. I want you to choose an action. Already sent a text to a client for a follow-up chat. Well, that is brilliant. Action in the webcast. Perfect. If you wouldn't mind, chuck what you're going to do, the experiment you're going to launch, the action you're going to take. Just chuck it in the chat box so I can feel like we achieved something here today. In the chat box, what are you going to do as a result of this? It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be world-changing. I just want to know that in this hour, a little switch got flicked in your mind. Yes, send more books out to peeps. Create yourself a little, create yourself a little chart on the wall, Lisa, that you tick off every time you send a book. Like, make a little game out of it. Draw cartoons. Yes. More upsell to existing clients. Awesome. Take up the offer to write an article for an industry mag. Definitely. Yes, follow up people who've already expressed some kind of interest, KP. Definitely, definitely. Launch a crazy experiment. I feel like that's your modus operandi, Lisa. I like it. The next crazy thing I see you do, I'm going to take 1% of the credit for it, okay? Samantha started a TikTok challenge. Awesome. All right. 2 final things. Sorry, we're slightly over time. I bet you have to go somewhere, but we're going to do 2 final things. I believe most solopreneurs put too much effort into loading the dice and not enough effort just rolling the damn things. Okay? So if you get to the end of a day and I could say to you, hey, Yoga, did you roll any dice today or did you spend all day loading them? If you spent all day loading the dice, you are overvaluing effort and undervaluing value. Roll more dice. Okay. If you would like help one-on-one, please reach out to me. Just send an email that says mentoring in the subject line and we can work something out. Over the next couple of months, there's going to be a few exciting things coming out. Number 1, I'm writing a book, The Solo Pro. Number 2, the ideas in that book will be turned into a thing called the Solo Process. So a process that you can follow to drive yourself towards commercial success. I think that out of that, there will be the Solo Program, which will be a place where we can all help each other out. And you can bet your ass I'm going to say stick to the process and get with the program a lot. That's going to be my new catchphrase. I'm kind of proud of that one, got to be honest. And finally, what I would love you to do is in the chat box, just type something that you loved about today. You can type it in a way that I could put it on my website. That'd be good. But you can just type it in a way that would make me feel good about my morning. That'd be good too. So if today was useful for you, fun for you, exciting for you, or has given you some kind of direction or an idea or whatever, please just put a quick little note, only needs to be a sentence, in the chat box, and I would super, super appreciate that. Woohoo! Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that energy. I try, Katie, I try. Loved it. Oh. Lots of little nuggets of practical inspiration. That one's going on my website. Thanks, KP. Got me out of my head. Excellent. Oh, thank you, Penelope. That's very kind of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, peeps. There's a couple more webinars next week that I've announced, an Ask Me Anything and another thing like this with a topic about how to get more peeps into your world. They'll be on my website by this afternoon. I'm really running at speed here because I haven't even got to that point. But I'd love to see you again next week. So if you're up for it, spend the time. One on Tuesday, one on Thursday, Australian time. I love you. So good to see you all again. It feels like home. I'll catch you very soon. Enjoy, everybody. Have a great day.